Picture this. You just turned 40. You're at a dinner with friends, and somehow the conversation drifts toward retirement, savings, the future. And someone casually asks the question that makes everyone go quiet for a second. So, how much do you actually have saved? Nobody wants to answer first. Because deep down, everyone at that table is doing the same silent math, wondering if they're behind, wondering if everyone else has more figured out than they do. Here's the truth nobody tells you. There isn't one universal number. But there is a real, calculable range based on your income, and I'm going to give you exactly what that range looks like. Not vague advice like, save what you can. Actual numbers, backed by real data, that tell you where you should be by 40. I'm David, and by the end of this video, you're going to know exactly where you stand, whether you're ahead, behind, or right on track. And more importantly, you're going to know exactly what to do next, regardless of which category you fall into. Let's start with the number everyone's afraid to say out loud. According to financial planning guidelines used by firms like Fidelity, by age 40, you should have approximately 3 times your annual salary saved for retirement. If you make $70,000 a year, that means $210,000 should be in your retirement accounts by the time you turn 40. I know what some of you are thinking right now. There's no way I have that. And here's the thing. You're not alone. According to the Federal Reserve's 2023 survey of consumer finances, the median retirement savings for households in the 35 to 44 age bracket is just $45,000. Not $210,000. $45,000. That's a massive gap between what experts recommend and what the average American actually has. So, does that mean most people are failing? Not exactly. It means most people were never taught how this math actually works, and by the time they figure it out, they think it's too late to catch up. It's not. But you need to understand what's actually happening with these numbers first. Here's what almost nobody explains clearly. That 3 times your salary rule isn't really about hitting some magic number by exactly age 40. It's about staying on a trajectory that gets you to financial independence by retirement age. And the trajectory looks different depending on when you started. Let's break down the actual benchmarks financial planners use. By age 30, you should have about 1 times your annual salary saved. By age 40, 3 times your salary. By age 50, 6 times your salary. By age 60, 8 times your salary. And by age 67, 10 times your annual salary. So if you're making $70,000 a year at 40 and you have $45,000 saved, which is close to the national median, you're not at 3 times your salary. You're closer to 2/3 of your salary. That puts you significantly behind the recommended trajectory. But here's where I need you to pause and actually think about this differently. Because panicking about being behind doesn't help you. Understanding exactly how far behind you are and what it takes to catch up does. Let's do the real math. If you're 40 years old with $45,000 saved and you want to reach that recommended $210,000 by using compound growth alone, at a 7% average annual return, that $45,000 would grow to about $354,000 by age 65 without adding another dollar. That's actually not bad. Time alone does a lot of the work, but if you add just $500 a month in new contributions starting today, at that same 7% return, by 65 you'd have approximately $920,000. That's the difference between I have some savings and I'm actually financially secure. And it comes down to consistent monthly contributions, not some dramatic lump sum you need to find. Now, let's talk about what actually goes into that savings number, because this is where people get confused. When financial experts say 3 times your salary by 40, they're talking specifically about retirement accounts. 401k, IRA, Roth IRA. Not your checking account. Not your emergency fund. Not equity in your home. This distinction matters enormously. I've talked to people who feel confident about their finances because they have $150,000 in home equity, but almost nothing in retirement accounts. Home equity doesn't pay your bills in retirement unless you sell the house or take out a loan against it. It's not liquid, and it's not the same thing as retirement savings. So here's your first action step. Separate your net worth from your retirement savings. They are not the same number, and confusing them is one of the most common reasons people think they're more prepared than they actually are. And now let's talk about emergency savings, because this is the second piece of the puzzle that has nothing to do with retirement, but everyone at 40 should have handled. By 40, you should have 3 to 6 months of essential expenses saved in a completely separate, liquid account. Not invested. Not in your 401k. Just sitting there, accessible, protecting you from having to go into debt if something unexpected happens. If your essential monthly expenses are $4,000, that means you need somewhere between $12,000 and $24,000 in an emergency fund by the time you're 40. This is separate from, and in addition to, your retirement savings. Here's the framework I want you to actually use. 3 separate numbers. Number 1, your emergency fund, 3 to 6 months of expenses, sitting in cash. Number 2, your retirement accounts, ideally around 3 times your annual salary by 40. Number 3, everything else, your home equity, any other investments, savings for specific goals like a child's education. That third category matters for your overall financial picture, but it doesn't count toward either of the first 2 numbers. Now, I want to address something important. What if you're 40 and you're nowhere close to these numbers? What if you're looking at your accounts right now and feeling that familiar wave of anxiety? Here's what actually matters. The specific number you're at today matters far less than the trajectory you start building from this point forward. Let me show you why. Sarah is 40 years old. She has $30,000 saved for retirement, well below the recommended $210,000 for her $70,000 salary. She feels like she's failed. But here's what the numbers actually say. If Sarah starts contributing $800 a month starting today, and gets even a modest employer match of $200 a month, that's $1,000 a month going into her retirement account. At a 7% average annual return over the next 25 years until she's 65, that $30,000 combined with those new contributions grows to approximately $850,000. That's not a disaster. That's a real retirement. The starting point matters less than most people think. What matters is the decision to start now, consistently, and let compound growth do what it does over decades. Compare that to David, also 40, who has the recommended $210,000 saved, right on track according to the guidelines. But David decides he's doing great and stops contributing new money, coasting on what he's already saved. At that same 7% return with no new contributions, his $210,000 grows to about $1.1 million by 65. So Sarah, who started $180,000 behind the recommended benchmark, ends up with $850,000. David, who was exactly on track, ends up with $1.1 million by doing nothing more. The person who started behind but kept contributing ended up closer to financial security than most people would expect. The person who was on track but stopped moving forward still came out ahead, but not by nearly as much as you'd think given his massive head start. This tells you something crucial. Being behind the benchmark at 40 isn't the disaster it feels like. Stopping your contributions, regardless of where you're starting from, is far more dangerous than starting late. So here's what I want you to actually do after watching this video. First, log into your retirement accounts right now, today, and find your actual current balance. Not an estimate. The real number. Second, calculate 3 times your current annual salary. That's your benchmark. Don't panic about the gap. Just know the number. Third, calculate what you'd need to contribute monthly to close that gap by retirement age using a compound interest calculator. There are free ones online. Plug in your current savings, your target age, and a conservative 7% return, and see what monthly contribution gets you there. Fourth, if you don't have 3 to 6 months of expenses in a separate emergency fund, that becomes priority number 1 before increasing retirement contributions. You need that safety net first. And fifth, if you're behind and it feels overwhelming, remember Sarah's example. She was $180,000 behind the recommended number and still built substantial wealth simply by starting consistent contributions and letting 25 years of compound growth do the heavy lifting. Here's the bottom line. The number you should have saved by 40 isn't really about hitting an arbitrary target on your birthday.
It's about understanding where you stand right now, honestly, without the confusion of mixing home equity with retirement accounts, without ignoring your emergency fund, and then making the decision to start moving in the right direction today. Whether you're at $45,000 or $250,000, the question that actually matters isn't "Am I behind?" It's "Am I contributing consistently starting now?" That question determines your outcome far more than whatever number is sitting in your account today. I'm David, and I'm here to help you take control of your finances. If this gave you clarity about where you actually stand, let me know in the comments. What's your number right now, and what's your plan to close the gap? I read every single comment.